Ladies and gentlemen, Pittsburgh guy here. This next video is going to be a recipe, French onion bread stuffing. Now, it's very simple, very few ingredients. It's extremely tasty. I've made it for about 6-7 people and they've all loved it. Matter of fact, it was the first side dish that I ran out of. So it's very simple. You need a few ingredients, a hearty bread of some kind, French onion soup, between 15 and 20 ounces, a cup of diced yellow or white onions, half a cup of diced celery. Now, if you want to, you could switch the celery and the onions. You could do less onions, more celery, or even them out both half a cup. We also use seasonings of salt and pepper, a teaspoon of each, a teaspoon of cumin, and a teaspoon of basil leaves, or you can cut fresh basil and do a teaspoon to maybe a tablespoon of that. Now, the hearty bread is a bread that I really I've never heard of this one before, but this bread here that's featured in the picture is a Mediterranean Athos fire bread. So I'm not sure what that is, but it's a hearty bread. It's something you need. You can't use regular wheat sliced bread, white sliced bread, potato bread, the thinner slices, you know, that you use for like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, things like that, because you cut it up, they're small cubes. Once they soak up all the juices and the flavors, they become very soggy, and you want something that's a hearty bread that can hold those juices, hold those seasonings, those flavors, and you still get like a good bite out of it, and it's not like a mess. You don't want like a soggy, runny type stuffing. So the hearty bread is where we're gonna go. You can use ciabatta, you can use pumpernickel. Oh man, there's so many other ones. I saw an Asiago crusted peppercorn bread, which would have been great too. But I wanted this one because it's something new and I haven't tried it yet. So the next step, we're gonna dice up the onions, dice up the celery, and I'm gonna cut the bread. So whenever I do that, we'll get right back. So once everything's cut, you can see that we have our bread that's cubed, our half a cup of celery, diced celery, and a cup of diced onions, and we are ready to go. So the next step, and make sure when you cut the bread, use a serrated knife. And when you do your onions and celery, you can use a serrated knife, chop it off with a chef's knife. So the next step is we're going to turn the oven to low to medium heat. So if you have numbers, and not everyone has numbers, but if you do, then we're looking at between 3 and 4, and I always go with 4. You can use spray. We can use Pam spray. We can use any type of non-stick spray. I actually like to use oil, and this is a coconut spray made by Pam as well. So a couple of these, because the onions and the celery, when they cook, they're going to leave a little moisture on the bottom, which is going to make it easier to cook. So the first things you want to put in, of course, is celery. And then you're going to put in your onions. And like I said, medium heat, 3 or 4. And then the next step after this is to let it cook. I had a little bit extra. So we're going to let it simmer for a little bit, let it cook. It'll take about 5, 6, 7 minutes. And then after it starts to cook, we are going to put in our seasonings, and then our bread, and then our French onion soup mix. And like I said, it's a teaspoon of cumin. Which isn't a lot, but it's enough. Has a nice earthy flavor to it. Teaspoon of pepper. Teaspoon of salt. And then basil, like I said, you can cut it fresh, or you can actually use the leaves that you can buy in the spice section in any grocery store, department store that sells food. Now we're going to let this simmer for another 5 minutes so it builds up some heat. And you can turn it up a little bit if you want to quicken it, because it doesn't have to be done, you know, within the time that I'm putting in the description. You can actually speed it up if you want, because we're just heating up the celery and the onions and getting the seasonings to incorporate with these vegetables right here. Now you should be able to hear the sizzling sound here of the onions and the celery. That means we are ready to go to the next step. The seasonings have been put in. Everything is starting to cook. Now we're going to put in our breadcrumbs. Now, like I said, we got to use hearty bread, and the crumbs, they don't have to be perfect. As you can see, you know, some of these are cubes, smaller than others. Some of them are a little bit bigger, but, you know, be as consistent as you want to be. They can be rough cut, but they have to soak up this soup. And the soup, if this was regular bread, wheat, potato, white, whatever it may be, the regular little slices you get, the soup would overpower it and it would be soggy, and that's not what you want. So we put all the breadcrumbs in, everything that you cut. Now we got all this in. Now we're going to open our soup. This here, I believe, is an 18-ounce can. 15 to 20 ounces will be plenty. So when you open your soup, you're going to pour it in gently. You're going to go around the perimeter, because you don't want to put too much like in one spot, because it's going to oversaturate those breadcrumbs. So around the perimeter, and then I go across, kind of like in an X, and then back around the perimeter, and then another X on the other spot that wasn't there. And then we're going to mix that up. And when you mix this, it has to be a gentle mix. You don't want to like really go into it, because you're going to break it up. Just mix it in gently. Incorporate all that soup with the breadcrumbs that you cut. Get those onions in there, get the celery in there. Mix it up good. Now we're going to put the lid on and leave it on. It's still at what, 4? We'll put the lid on and leave it on for another 5 minutes, and then we're going to stir it again. And to be honest, 15 to 20 ounces is plenty of soup. But if you feel like maybe the breadcrumbs could use some more, you could soak it up some more, use half a can, like 5 to 6 ounces. You don't want to use too much, because it's going to make it soggy. Alright, so we stirred it up. We're going to put the lid on and let this sit for another 5 minutes on 4 heat, and then we'll come back to it. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, after we go through all the cooking times, this is how it should look. And it smells fantastic. But remember, this is a very, very crucial point. If you add more soup, I put in 18 ounces in the original can. I added an additional 5. That gave us 23. If you put in 2 cans, like those 18-ounce cans I used, that's way too much. It's going to get very soggy, and it's not going to be good. So you want to make sure that you add less than 7 to 8 ounces on top of what we already did, which was 18, because you just don't want too much. So here it is. It's a very delicious home-cooked stuffing. French onion bread stuffing.